So, good morning everyone. As I had told you in my last class, after the discussion on what did we have in the last class, we just discussed about the homonyms in English. So, this exercise on homonyms as well as homophones was completed because we had it in the chapter that we discussed, Babar Ali, isn't it? So, in the textbook you have been given a little details or maybe about the concept clearance about what are homophones and homonyms in English with a proper definition with certain set of examples. I have already done it in my class. So, this is not something that we are doing it from the workbook part, but it is something that we are doing it from the literature textbook that we have, so that you can have a little bit of knowledge about what exactly would be the grammar things that will be asked in the examination's point of view. So, if I have to tell you about what are homophones and homonyms, the definition should be very clear in your mind. At the same time, you should also be knowing different words and how can you identify them and categorize them as what are homonyms and what are homophones. So, this was something that was pertaining to my last class, and today let us come on to the next a poem, a small poem that we have, okay, and it is titled as If I Was a Tree. So, before I could go to the text, or before we go to the text here, first of all, let us understand what do you mean by the title of the poem. What do you understand and what exactly does the title talk to us about? Okay. Now, as you can see that the title of the poem is that If I Was a Tree. So, can you tell me like what exactly is the tense that is used in this title? You have used, or you can come across a word was, which tells us that it is something about the past. So, there is a kind of what can I say, a wish, okay, there is a kind of a thing. Why? Because you actually have, how does the title start? It starts with a conditional word in English, isn't it? If. So, where do we normally use the word if? So, we use the word if only in the conditions, isn't it? So, this word is actually called as a conditional word in English, isn't it? I wish if I was a animal, something, okay. I wish if I was knowing everything, okay. If, this word, particular word if, is used only when you wish for something here, isn't it? So, when you read this title of the poem, that is if I was a tree, okay. So, what do you need to understand here is that there is a wish by the speaker or by the poet himself who actually tells us about his wish being fulfilled or not fulfilled. We have to understand once we come into the text here. So, what do you need to know here by looking at the title here is that if is a conditional word that is being used by the poet, and here there is a wish, something of a poet who wants to specifically tell us that, like, you know, what if he would have wished and what is that he wanted to become or so. Okay, the poem is actually written by Moodnakudu Chinnaswamy. It's actually a poem that has been translated to English. The other details I'll come to the text when we start doing it. But first of all, let us understand that we are doing today a poem by Moodnakudu Chinnaswamy, who has titled this poem as If I Was a Tree. Okay, so as I said, if is always a conditional word that we use. You might have come across many words in English like, you know, if, way, will, would, whether, isn't it? So, these are some of the words which we make use of only during the conditions. Okay, so here there is a condition that if I was a tree. Okay, so it can also be a wish, it can also be a condition. So, this is what exactly you need to understand about the title of this poem that we are going to discuss it today. Alright, so if I was a tree. So, there is a man, there is a speaker, there is a poet who is wishing of becoming something. In the similar way, if I ask you so many questions regarding like what is your wish or what do you want to become, you would definitely have your own answers there, isn't it? So, here is a conditional word if with the rest of the title of the poem, I was a tree. Okay, so there is a person who wanted to be a tree or something. Okay, this is what exactly you will have to understand. So, having said that, let us come on to the text and see what do we have in the poem by Moodnakudu Chinnaswamy. So, page number 54 in your textbooks. Before we could actually come on to that, so it's very clearly been given that the actual root language of this poem is actually Kannada, which has been translated to English by Rowena Hill. So what exactly it is, let us understand all those things first and then we will start discussing the poem. Okay, so page number 56 in your textbooks, you have been given a note on the poet. So let us read and understand about something more about Moodnakudu Chinnaswamy. So in this page number 56, you have been given a note on both the poet as well as the translator. So let us read that and understand it first, and then we will come on to the discussion part of the poem. All right? Okay. A note on the poet Moodnakudu Chinnaswamy, who was born in the year 1954. Okay, he is a well-known poet who hails from Moodnakudu village in Chamarajanagar district of Karnataka. So as I said, the root language of the poem that was written is actually Kannada, and he is a Kannada poet who has written this poem, If I Was a Tree, in the translated version of Kannada language, which has been translated. So born in the year 1954, he belongs to a village in the Chamarajanagar district of Karnataka. And he has 2 postgraduate degrees. So what do you mean by that Viz that is given? V-I-Z there. Can you read that on page number 56 where it's given under a note on the poet? Viz is nothing but namely. So he hails from Chamarajanagar district of Karnataka, and he actually has 2 degrees, namely. V-I-Z is nothing but an abbreviation form for namely. So first master's degree he has in his M.Com, and then he has M.A. with Doctor of Literature in Social Sciences. He is a Director of Finance in Bangalore Metropolitan Transport Corporation by profession. So not only a poet, he also has his other job where he is actually the Director of Finance in BMTC. I'm sure you have heard of this acronym BMTC. Okay, so a poet by his interest or about by his passion, but he is actually serving as the Director of Bangalore Metropolitan Transport Corporation. That is his original or actual profession. Then poetry is his passion. So we are talking or we are reading about Moodnakudu Chinnaswamy. So poetry is his passion, but has worked in other genre of literature as well, besides having a wide range of interests in culture, theatre and social work. So this is what this man is all about. Okay, not only a profession as a director of BMTC, but he also has the other interests, namely a particular tradition or a particular group of literature as well, where he has a wide range of interest in theatre and culture and social work. So these are the 3 areas where he has his interest. So he is very much interested in the culture of a specific tradition or a religion or whatsoever. At the same time, he has lots of interest in literature, theatre, that is plays, okay, and then he also has his interest in social work. Then he has brought out 24 books so far, all right, which include 6 collections of poetry, 4 essays, 3 plays and a collection of short stories. Now if you want to know more about his interest in literature, these books or the number of the works that he has done will clearly tell us about his interest. All right. So what we need to see here is that so far there are around 24 books that have been brought out by Moodnakudu Chinnaswamy. All right. And out of these there are collection of poems, short stories and plays. Okay. Collection of short stories, essays, plays. So these are the things that he has interest, out of which so far around 24 books have been published by the same poet here. All right. Then he is widely translated into many languages apart from English, Spanish and Hebrew. So a well-known author whose works have been translated into so many different languages, out of which the main translated languages of his works are basically English, They are also been translated to Spanish, and they are also been translated to Hebrew language. An anthology. Anthology means collection. An anthology of his selected poems in Spanish has been brought out by the government of Venezuela under World Poetry Series. So there is one phenomenal work that has been done by Moodnakodu Chinnaswamy is mentioned in the note of a note on the poet, that is one of his collections of the poetry. That is, one of his collections of the poetry has been translated into Spanish language, and it has been brought out by the government of Venezuela under the title World Poetry Series. So this is one phenomenal work that you can just remember. Okay, so this is what all about is been given on the note of the poet. So yes, today we are discussing a poem titled If I Was a Tree. So the original language in which this poem was written is in English. So in order to know more about it, we have just read or discussed about a note on the poet. So first of all, understand that he was born in the year 1954, and by profession he is actually a director of finance in BMTC, who hails from Chamarajanagar district of Karnataka. This is about his personal details. When you actually come back to his work, this man is very much interested, apart from his profession, in literature, theatre and social work. Alright, and then there have been given about around some 24 books that his books have been published. There are around 24 so far, which have been considering or comprising of essays, short stories, and anthology of so many poems. Since he is known poet, since he is very much interested with all this theatre, language and literature and culture, his many works have been translated into so many different languages, out of which there are 3 mention of the languages that have been told: English, Spanish and Hebrew. And then one phenomenal work done by this poet Moodnakodu Chinnaswamy is that the government of Venezuela has brought out the collection of his poems under World Poetry Series. So some of his poems which have been translated to Spanish language has been published or brought out by the government of Venezuela under the title or under the heading World Poetry Series. So this is what you need to just remember about the original poet of the poem, that is Moodnakodu Chinnaswamy. Okay, so there we wind up the discussion on the poet. Now let us come to a small introduction about Rowena Hill. Okay, now you need to understand here why, because this work has been translated from Kannada to English by this person, isn't it? Rowena Hill. Okay, now let us read about a small note on the translator of this poem. That is, Rowena Hill was born in England in the year 1938 and went to school in New Zealand. She attended universities in New Zealand, Italy and India, especially the University of Mysore is something that has been mentioned here. So as I said, Rowena Hill, she is British by birth, who was born in the country UK, that is England, and she has been attending so many different universities, including University of Mysore as well. And then she taught English literature at the Universidad de los Andes in Merida, Venezuela, where she is presently living now. She has published 4 books of poems in Spanish, as well as the poems, essays and translations in periodicals in Venezuela, Colombia, India and USA. She has translated some of Kannada's best known poets into Spanish language. More importantly, it is to her credit that she has translated several literary works in Indian languages into English and Spanish. So what do you understand here by the note on the translator is that she is a well-known translator who has translated most of Indian language works, poems, short stories or essays into 2 specific languages, that is, one is English, the other one is Spanish. Why? Because she's been teaching in so many different universities and she is a well-versed academician, or probably she is a well-known translator in English as well as the Spanish language. Okay, unlike the root poet or unlike the original poet of the poem, she has also collected or brought out so many works of her own. At the same time, she has also brought so many translated works. That is why this name Rowena Hill is a very well known name, because most of Indian language works or the poems or the essays or the short stories have been translated either to English or to the Spanish language. That is what you need to understand here. Okay, so with this discussion we just wind up here the discussion on the note on the root poet, that is Moodnakudu Chinnaswamy. I have discussed about what exactly does he do or what is he doing or what has he done. At the same time, I have also discussed about who is Rowena Hill and what has she done here and why are we reading about her doing this particular poem, If I Was a Tree. Hope you all have understood what I have just discussed here. I have discussed about two people. One is the root poet of the poem If I Was a Tree, that is Moodnakudu Chinnaswamy, and then I have also discussed certain things related to Rowena Hill, as who is she, what has she done and why are we reading, because we are reading a note on her because she is the one who has translated If I Was a Tree, which was actually written in Kannada to English. Hope I am clear with this. Alright. Okay. Now with this note, let us come on to the pre-reading activity of the poem before we go to the poem. Okay. Now, what is the title of the poem? The title of the poem is nothing but If I Was a Tree. So here, do you think that pre-reading activity of the poem is asking us a question, and that question is that, do you think that being tree is more convenient than being a human being? It's a very interesting question that has been asked before we could do or before we could discuss something about the poem. Do you really think that being a tree is more convenient than being a human being? What do you think? So it's a general question that has been asked about what can I say, about your person or your appearance being on the earth, whether what would you like to be, or would you think that being a tree is more convenient than a human being? Why? Because we all consider that both tree as well as a human being is as a living creature on the earth, isn't it? So even tree also has a life unlike human beings. So do you really think that being a tree in a forest or in a place, in a land or whatsoever, is more convenient to you than you have been born as a human being? So ask this question to yourself and let me know what is the answer that you would get. Would you like to be a tree or would you like to be a human being? So the question is very general in terms of asking the opinion here. So you are free here to take the what can I say? You are free here obviously to think or to give your reviews about this particular statement. What would you like to be? Would you like to be a tree? Would you like to be a human being? Now, why am I specifically stressing on this question is that please read the title of the poem. I have very clearly told you what does the title mean here. So obviously it is If I Was a Tree. So obviously the poet or the translator or the speaker in the poem definitely wanted to be a tree, and that's what it was, his or her wish. Isn't it? If, that is the word that has been put here in the title as a condition. If I was a tree. So when you use this word was in the form of a past tense in the title, it means that obviously a poem is definitely written by a human being only, but he or she is having a wish. And what is that wish? It is nothing but the pre-reading activity of the question. So what is the question? So what do you think, or what is more convenient to you, being a tree or being a human being? So if you ask this question to yourself, you definitely have your own way of pretending, or what can I say, preferring this choice of tree over human being or human being over a tree. It is all left to your imagination. It is all left to your way of understanding the text here. So, am I clear with this? So, today we have just started a new poem from your literature text, that is, If I Was a Tree. So, this is a root language, or the original language of the poem is actually Kannada, which has been translated. So, in your exams, when you write your answers, you see to it that you make use of this name rather than the translator. Getting? So, what you need to understand here is that If I Was a Tree is written by Modna Kodu Chinnaswamy. This is what you need to understand. Okay? Of course, yes, this poem is in a translated version from Kannada to English, and there is also a translator, don't forget that. But keep in your mind that you talk about this poem with the title, and the poet should be Modna Kodu Chinnaswamy, but not the translator. Why am I telling you this is, you will not take the name of Rowena Hill, or maybe you can, if you remember, well and good. If not, you should specifically give credit of this poem being written by this poet himself. So, about the poet, about the translator, I have very clearly discussed in this class. So, you can just remember those things that have been already discussed, okay, or you can read it from the text that has been given to you. Okay. So, next poem today we are going to discuss is this one. Okay. Now, it's actually a very short poem. You know the language, how it could be, as it is a translated version from Kannada to English. Okay. So, first let me read this poem and let us see how much things can you able to catch it, can you able to revive it after the first reading or something. Then we will discuss it stanza wise or line by line. All right. So, look at the picture that has been given in the poem after the pre-reading question that you have. So, you can just have a look at your textbook and you can think again with your own reviews on looking at the picture. So, you can see that there is a tree, all right. Then you can also see that there is a can you see that picture, all of you? So, there are two things that needs to be understood. At the same time, there are other many things that you can review the picture. So, you can just review after looking at your picture into that particular thing. Okay. So, what we need to know here is that it is something about the nature. Why? There is an animal that is included. At the same time, there is also a tree. At the same time, there are also so many what? What has been given there? So, there are so many gods with respect to the Hindu mythology has also been given there. So, why do you think why it's given there? So, this is what we need to understand here today. So, pre-reading activity of the question about the convenience of being a tree or a human being, and then looking at this picture, a tree is there which is a shelter, isn't it? A tree can also always be a shelter to the cattle that we have at our home, isn't it? In the similar way, you can just look into that picture and then you can have your own things in your mind in the form of giving a review to the picture about the things that you have noticed in the picture. All right. Okay. Now, if I was a tree. So, the very first line of the poem is nothing but the same thing that is the title of the poem, isn't it? If I was a tree. So, who do you think that I is here? This word I. What is the narration here? The narration in the poem is nothing but first person narration. So, it can be or it should be the poet himself. Okay. So, first let me read the poem. Let us see how much part of it can you includes in your mind the moment we read it for the first time. Then we will discuss it. If I was a tree, the bird wouldn't ask me before it built its nest what caste I am. When sunlight embraced me, my shadow wouldn't feel defiled. My friendship with the cool breeze and the leaves would be sweet. Raindrops wouldn't turn back, taking me for a dog eater. When I branch out further from my roots, Mother Earth wouldn't flee, shouting for a bath. The sacred cow would scrape her body on my bark, scratching wherever it itched, and the 300,000 gods sheltering inside her would touch me. Who knows, at the end, hacked into the pieces of dry wood, burning in the holy fire, I might be made pure or becoming a buyer for a sinless body, be born on the shoulders of 4 good men. This is what the poem is all about. Okay, so what I do is that you just read it once again, okay, and let us see how much can you imbibe with what poet is really want to tell us with this title, If I Was a Tree. Okay, there are so many things that come into our mind the moment we think or the moment we talk here about something that is called as humanity. There is nature. When we talk about humanity, we definitely talk about one particular aspect that we still face in a democratic country like India, that is nothing but casteism. So why am I mentioning this word is here is that the moment you read it one more time, you will definitely understand that the poet is actually telling us about what is being more convenient to him, being a human being or maybe a tree. Well, if he wants to become a tree, what he would do, if he is a man or if he has born as a human being, what is he that he is facing in his life? So, having said these two important qualities in this particular poem, we need to understand what the poet is really want to convey us the idea about which is being more convenient in the life that is we are leading on this earth. So, do you think it is becoming a tree was very easy, or do you think that being human you are satisfied? So, that is why I said even the pre-reading activity of the question also tells us that which is more convenient to you. So, it is an individual choice. Maybe you can choose that, yeah, I would have been a tree, or no, I am happy with being what I am. So, there are so many things, there are so many differences of opinions that one can think about your way that you are present in this world. Okay, we all are human beings, we were born as human beings, isn't it? And we will definitely die as human beings. But the thing is that what is that difference that you can find between these two aspects of life, where a tree is also having a life unlike the human being? But we always take it for granted for the fact that man is something who is having a, what can I say, a control, who is having a main control on the other living species of the world or something. Unlike human beings, we also find the animals where man is of course being scared or afraid of, especially the carnivorous animals like tiger or cheetah or maybe a lion, isn't it? But the man enjoys those animals by looking at them, especially when they are in the cage or when they are in a place called a zoo or so, isn't it? So, what you need to understand here is that it is about your own evolution of being a human being, or you wanted to be a tree. Well, if you want to be a tree, what would have been enjoyed? Or if you are being a human being, what is that sufferings or the sorrows or the disappointments that you have in your life? So, Murdakodu Chinnaswamy in this poem tells us about the convenience way of life in terms of whether being a tree or whether being a human being. So, when he has this kind of a dilemma in his mind, since the word if is used in the title. So, if I was a tree. But here we very well understand or need to understand that the poet has already born as a human being, but he wanted or he had a wish of maybe becoming a tree or something. So in the next class of mine, we will discuss this poem line to line in terms of what the poet wants to convey as the idea with the title, If I Was a Tree. So I positively presume the fact that whatever has been discussed so far with respect to the title, with respect to the poet, with also respect to the translator, and also your reviews on the picture of that has been given in the poem, at the same time the pre-reading activity of the poem, which also tells us the fact that yes, let us see what one wishes to be in one's life. So in the next class of mine, we will discuss about this particular thing, If I Was a Tree. So thank you very much, and I shall meet you in the next class of mine with the discussion on the poem. Thank you very much.